It's time for questions to the Office of First Minister and Deputy First Minister, and we'll start first with oral questions. And I call Brenda Hale.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question 1, please.
Mr Speaker, with your permission, I will ask Junior Minister McCann to answer this question.
The Secret Garden is an extremely worthwhile programme which offers a wide range of opportunities for adults with learning disabilities. It provides an important person-centred environment which helps people acquire the skills necessary to secure employment and helps them to reach their own personal potential. There is a duty of care to all of those involved to ensure that this issue is handled sensitively, and indeed Praxis Care was the subject of a debate in this chamber on Monday the 28th of April, in which all parties acknowledged the work carried out by Praxis Care and called on the Secretary of State to explore all possible avenues to ensure that the employment provided and the work carried out by Praxis at Hillsborough Castle remain on site. While we, as OFM-DFM, have not held direct discussions with the NIO in the matter, I understand the Minister of Health met with the Chief Executive of Praxis Care and the Secretary of State to discuss the matter. It is our hope that the situation can be resolved in such a way to the satisfaction of all those involved.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Junior Minister for her answer. If finance is the issue with possible relocation or recompense, should DFM not consider funding under the Executive Disability Strategy?
Well, as the member would be aware, the disability strategy has a number of elements to it, and the purpose of the strategy is to set out that high-level policy framework to give guidance to government departments to make sure they, carry through the responsibilities in terms of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So in terms of the funding, in that we have identified a number of signature programmes already within that strategy, and I think that I myself did meet with Praxis Care, and I also went to visit the Secret Garden. And I have to say, and I know the member would agree with me, that the 16 people who are working there that have those learning disabilities, they depend very much on that site to actually, just in everyday life, that they feel that they need that in terms of, and their families as well, for the social interaction that it gives them. And I believe that we should be exploring all avenues to ensure that site is kept and those people are kept on that site. We have also, I have also contacted the NIO and the Secretary of State to express that. But I do think that we should be doing all that we can to ensure that that the 16 individuals are kept on site and their jobs are kept open. Yes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and can I thank the Minister? And can I ask whether the decision to close Praxis Care Garden and Coffee Shop at Hillsborough Castle is, according to the Minister, compatible with the Bamford Mental Health Review, which argued, among other things, that people with learning disabilities need stimulation and trust?
Well, as I said in my previous answer, and I will say to the member, I actually brought the debate to the floor of the House, and I know that there was all party support for the motion that was put forward. I do believe that there is a responsibility on the Secretary of State and the Northern Ireland Office to ensure that particularly the individuals who are employed there, that their employment continues, but also that the Praxis Care have also invested up to £400,000 in the site. So I think that there's a responsibility on the Secretary of State and the NIO to ensure that if they are relocated, that investment is returned in some way. I think it's only fair and just that should happen.
Can I thank the Junior Minister for her responses thus far? Does the Minister believe that everything possible has been done to support practice, and indeed what individual support is given to the individuals who are working in the Secret Garden?
Well, again, I will say that even in our discussions with the NIO and the Secretary of State on this issue, it's not as if the reception area and even in terms of the coffee shop facility will not be needed in any future plan, whatever the development of the site is going to be. So again, I would say that our responsibility in terms of the responsibility of the Executive is to put pressure on the NIO and to put pressure on the Secretary of State, who are ultimately responsible for this site, to ensure first of all, that the Praxis Care, the money they have invested, is not lost, but more importantly, that the 16 people who have learning difficulties remain as working on the site, because I think it's very, very important for their social interaction. And indeed, if you go there and you visit the people concerned, it's very, very clear that it means so much to them on an everyday basis. So I would say that we need to ensure that the Secretary of State and the NIO do treat this sensitively, but also ensure that the people who are working there remain on site.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and could I thank the Minister for her answers thus far. And could I ask her more generally for her assessment of the scale of poor mental health and well-being across Northern Ireland, and of any identifiable causes of the problem?
Well, again, as in OFM-DFM, we have responsibility basically for the disability strategy and to ensure that other departments actually fulfil their responsibilities in terms of the disability strategy. It was agreed in January 2013 by the Executive, and it provides, as I said, the implementation for the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and that's basically to ensure that we take forward the work that improves the lives of children and adults with a disability. So I believe that the strategy does cover all types and forms of disability for all ages, including children, young people, adults and older people. And our responsibility in OFM-DFM is to monitor other departments and what they do, their actions in terms of that. So we would definitely be taking that forward and doing that monitoring and evaluation.
Question number 2, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker, with your permission, I will ask Junior Minister McCann to answer this question also.
Mr Speaker, with your permission, I will answer questions 2 and 3 together. On the 10th of February, the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister announced that £33 million will be invested in 23 projects aimed at tackling poverty and deprivation through improved community-based services and facilities. These first 23 projects have been identified as priorities by the steering groups in each local area plan across the 9 social investment fund zones. Officials are currently working with lead partners to agree the letters of offer for these projects and further arrangements for their delivery. To this end, a conference for all lead partners was held on the 10th of March, which provided a platform to move forward. Following agreement of letters of offer, lead partners will take forward the necessary procurement to deliver the outcomes described in the project proposals that have been approved. We are keen to ensure that projects are fully established and underway as soon as possible, and officials are working to ensure this is the case. A further 29 projects have been identified as within the limits of affordability, in line with the budget allocations for each zone. Work is ongoing to secure business case approvals for these. Subject to this and final costings, we hope to announce further projects later this year. Details of the 23 projects announced and the further 29 prioritised for funding within the budget are available on the OFM-DFM website. We would also like to assure members that the £80 million remains ring-fenced for the delivery of the Social Investment Fund, and it is our intention that this will be fully allocated to projects by the end of this year.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank the Junior Minister on progress towards the realisation of projects under SIF. Could the Junior Minister clarify if any letters of offer have actually gone out as yet?
Yes, as I said in my previous answer, there have been a conference was held in March of this year, and in terms of the 23 projects that were announced, that those letter of offers should be going out soon. I'm not sure if the steering groups have actually received them, but they have certainly been in contact with our officials, and our officials have taken them through in terms of what projects will actually be getting that letter of offer, and that was what the conference was for.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and can I also thank the Junior Minister for answers thus far, and can I ask the Junior Minister, have any projects received proposed funding that meet one of the key aims of the Social Investment Fund that will address dereliction in communities?
Well, again, the member would be aware that the projects that have actually been looked at were projects that the actual steering groups put forward themselves. So they were the priority projects in that area. I know that the groups were waiting on seeing what allocation was going to go across the zones. And when that allocation was actually decided on and then they were informed of that, then they had to go back and look and reprioritise some of their projects. But certainly, I mean, the 23 projects that have been announced and the further 29 that have been prioritised, certainly some of them, and I mean, it's on the website right across the north, which projects I'm talking about, but certainly some of them do look at dereliction and in terms of new capital build as well.
Good. Can I thank the Minister for the answer thus far? Can I ask the Minister to outline how any procurement models employed under the Social Investment Fund will ensure local delivery partners are given opportunity to deliver initiatives?
Well, the member raises a very important point in terms of to ensure that those local delivery partners are given that opportunity, because we sometimes hear in terms of procurement and when government contracts go out, that some of the smaller, even in terms of some of the small and medium-sized businesses, but particularly the community sector and those delivery services that are delivered by, those people who deliver in the community can sometimes find it difficult. But our preference is for the locally designed interventions to be taken forward where the capacity and the capability exists to deliver that. We believe there is potential for procurement projects to impact on training, employment and investment in a local community and longer-term regeneration. And as such, the social and environmental requirements can be included in public contracts insofar as they comply with procurement rules. Lead partners will be contracted to procure service providers who can deliver the specific projects which have been successful in the appraisal stage. And we certainly welcome any sort of collaborative approach where community groups can come together, because, as I said, sometimes they can find it very, very difficult, but where they can come together as consortia to build and to deliver those particular projects within and across all the social investment zones.
Joe Byrne.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Minister for her answer. Can the Minister outline how confident or otherwise she is about how the steering groups are operating, and in particular in relation to the Western Steering Group, in which Tribana District Care Services are represented and Derry Valley Care? Is she happy that there is a fair allocation across the zones?
Well, the member again would be aware that we did, when selecting members for the initial steering groups, we were very mindful to consider geographical representation, but obviously they had to be, because these are right across the north, and they had to be a manageable size, so it wasn't always possible to ensure a spread of representation across individual zones. But I do know that appointed steering group members and their supporting consultants work very closely with each of the zones and with different organisations and different groups within those zones to identify projects in terms of the planning process. And I cannot provide the assurance that when those areas within a zone that demonstrate evidence to objective need, they have also been included in the plan. So maybe if someone just in a particular area isn't sitting on that particular zone, it doesn't mean to say that they don't have input into those groups also and taking forward those plans.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I also thank the Minister for her comments. Minister, can you tell us, please, how much of the £80 million will be spent in the current financial year, or indeed in the next year, if that is applicable?
Well, obviously the spend to date was focused on the consultation and the work to get the steering groups up and ready to deliver. Also, in terms of the necessary approvals and the structures and the processes, we all need them in place to ensure the fund actually delivers to the benefit of the communities that need it. And I can understand that sometimes that there's a view that there's not much money getting actually spent on the actual projects and that. But can I assure the member that after the conference that was held on March 10th, we're in a better place than what we were in terms of the connectivity, in terms of keeping people up to date, and to actually get the money out there as quickly as possible, so that those projects can take place in those programmes.
Question 4, please.
A key focus of the Executive's programme for Government 2011 to 2015 is to grow the economy. We are committed to bringing investment, jobs, tourists, new skills and best practice by promoting local capabilities and developing mutually beneficial relationships with targeted countries, regions and international organisations. Securing international projects requires long-term relationship building and raising awareness of the many advantages of investing here. We will continue to be proactive in targeting countries and organisations in an effort to secure trade and investment opportunities. Our international engagement during the last year has generated a number of significant benefits. As a result of recent visits to Japan in December and to the United States in March, we have been able to secure investments from Fujitsu with the announcement in December of a 192 job project for dairy, and in February Ryobi announced a £32 million investment with the creation of 100 new jobs in Carrickfergus. We are pleased to report that we had a very successful visit to the west and east coast of the United States in March. We had meetings with senior executives from HBO and Seagate Technology. Both of these companies make a significant contribution to the local economy. We also met with Concentrix, and we hosted a luncheon in San Jose, which was attended by over 120 potential investors. Both HBO and Concentrix have since announced major investments here. The HBO announcement will generate in excess of $20 million annually to the local economy, and Concentrix will create over 1,000 new jobs, which will contribute over $18 million a year in wages and salaries here. And of course, the Convergence announcement in Derry, the EY announcements, Capita, Schrader Electronics, and this morning the Wrightbus announcement is all very, very good news. So the First Minister and I are confident that our personal intervention helps bring potential investors over the line and commit to investing here. First Minister and I continue to make a strong personal commitment to promoting economic growth during our overseas visits. In fact, this is the underlying objective for any visit we undertake. So we look forward to standing here in the future to announce more very important new investments as a result of overseas visits.
I just remind the Deputy First Minister on the time limits, and if ministers need more time, certainly they can ask and they'll get them more time. Sean Lynch.
Shane, I want to thank the Speaker and the Deputy First Minister for his comprehensive answer. Can the Minister give us his views of recent investment by HBO and other investments in the film and television industry?
Well, I think by this stage the members here, as well as the general public, will be well aware of the extensive publicity that has been given in the course of recent weeks to the phenomenal success that the Game of Thrones has been right throughout the international community. Investment in the 4 series to date of $9.25 million has returned over $98 million to the local economy in terms of direct leverage spent. The economic impact of this type of investment in the TV and film industry is significant when coupled with the wider benefits that have been derived to date. Securing internationally mobile productions of this type has also led to the development of additional sound stage facilities, which will increase our ability to secure large-scale productions and will enable us to manage multiple productions at the same time. We have a recognised credibility of association with international production projects, which has significant added value opportunities for our economy, not least in terms of tourism. And NI Screen continues to engage with key stakeholders, including the Tourist Board and Tourism Ireland, on developing this opportunity. Tourism Ireland recently used the Shore, Terry and Orla George's Oscar-winning film to highlight and promote the local tourist industry. So the relationship with HBO has been very, very important, and as a result of the success of the Game of Thrones, the making of Dracula, and indeed many other productions in the course of recent times, we now have a very solid base on which to build.
Mike Nesbitt. Mr Nesbitt.
Mr Speaker, thank you very much, and I thank the Deputy First Minister for his answers to date. The House is often told that Northern Ireland comes second only to London in terms of attracting foreign direct investment into the UK. That's something obviously to be welcomed and embraced. Could the Deputy First Minister help me embrace it further by giving us the comparative breakdown in percentage terms? What percentage goes to London of total FDI? What percentage comes to Northern Ireland?
Well, I don't have those figures, but we will write to the member with that, and I think in asking the question the member knew fine rightly that that would be the answer. The important thing is that we're doing well. The important thing is that we have, over the course of recent times, against the backdrop of what has been a very cruel world recession, we have been battling on all fronts. And more importantly, we have been all battling together. The fact is that the overseas visits that we have engaged in has had a major impact in places like North America and in Japan. And of course, the opening of a new office in Beijing later this year provides a further opportunity to build on that relationship with the politicians in China. You know, against the backdrop of the world recession, what has happened here has been pretty phenomenal. But we've got to keep it going. There are far too many people unemployed. And although all of the signs appear to be very good, when we listen to the experts who monitor all of this, I suppose what's most encouraging about the news of the last couple of days is the prospects for people within the construction industry, which is hugely important for our own local indigenous businesses. In terms of the ability that we have to compete with regions like London and indeed many others, I think we've clearly shown as a result of the effort that has been made that we can't compete with anybody. The exact figures that, in percentage terms, that you're seeking, we will write to you with those.
Speaker, and can I thank the ministers for their answers thus far. Given its importance in terms of attracting FDI, can I ask the Deputy First Minister what involvement he or his department had in the promotion of the enterprise zone at Coleraine?
Well, I mean, the enterprise zone in Coleraine is effectively a pilot project, and principally the responsibility for dealing with that resides with the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Investment. And from our perspective, what we are trying to do is ensure that we can see the success of the Coleraine enterprise zone as a forerunner for other developments in other parts of the north. So I think that in terms of departmental responsibility, it was more a responsibility of DETI than it was of OFM-DFM.
Jim Allister. Mr. Allen.
Thank you. What impact does it have on promoting Northern Ireland as a stable place when the Deputy First Minister's mask slips and it emerges that his support for law and order is selective and conditional on his terrorist buddies not being pursued? What impact does that have on foreign public confidence?
Well, I think that I have had a very positive impact alongside the First Minister in recording the success that we have seen to date over the course of the last number of years, bringing more foreign direct investment jobs into the north of Ireland than at any other time in the history of the state. The member refers to my comments, and I think perhaps people should have listened very carefully to what I had to say rather than work on a media interpretation for which I am not responsible. I've made my position absolutely crystal clear. I fully support the PSNI and those who are committed to delivering impartial and accountable policing. I am absolutely opposed to those who would seek to undermine the progress we have made on policing and justice and in the wider peace process. Those elements, I am determined, will not turn the clock back to the dark days of policing, which included a lot of repression and sectarianism.
Fry McCann. Mr. McCann.
Question 5.
I condemn all racist and sectarian attacks. Building a united, shared and reconciled community is a clear commitment within the programme for government. The Executive has committed to deliver a range of measures to build good relations through the Together Building a United Community strategy and, in turn, create the conditions to progress further towards a prosperous, peaceful and safe society. Work is progressing across all 7 headline actions, and departments are also working to drive forward the implementation of the other actions and commitments contained in the strategy. The strategy recognises that our community is increasingly diverse and envisions a society which is strengthened by this diversity, where cultural expression is celebrated and embraced, and where everyone can live, learn, work and socialise together, free from prejudice, hate and intolerance. One of the key priorities within the strategy, Our Safe Community, aims to create a community where everyone feels safe and moving around, and where life choices are not inhibited by fears around safety. So I want a society free from hate and intolerance, and I am determined to prioritise the Together Building a United Community agenda. I am clear in my resolve to continue to build good relations across our community. We must work to strengthen the peace that we have built over time and ensure that the more negative elements within our society do not undermine what we are trying to achieve. Together, building a united community is not only about tackling the physical structures of division, but also the attitudes and behaviours that enable their continued existence.
Does the Deputy First Minister believe that these attacks are being orchestrated?
Well, I have been on the public record for some considerable time over the course of the last number of weeks as making it clear that I believe these attacks are orchestrated and that they are being orchestrated by the UVF. And I call on this organisation to halt this activity immediately. These attacks are absolutely unacceptable, deplorable, and I call on all political leaders to speak out loudly and to stand together with victims of these hate crimes.
Mr Campbell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I suppose everyone, both inside the chamber and outside the chamber, will unite in condemning all attacks, whoever they are enacted upon and whoever carries them out. But would the Deputy First Minister not agree that his condemnation, unequivocal as it is, would carry more weight if he were to own up in an open and transparent manner to all of the hate crimes that he engaged in when he was in the IRA?
Well, I know that the member who has just asked that question is, unlike me, very embittered. I have a lot to be bitter about in the past, but I don't intend to lead my life through hatred and bitterness. I want to contribute positively to everything that is happening in our society. And I do think it's about time that leading spokespersons who say, from the unionist benches, who say that they condemn attacks on isolated East Europeans, and for different reasons, through either sectarianism or racism, or the attacks on the Alliance Party offices, I think it's about time they stood up and told the public who they believe are responsible. Am I the only person who has the courage to do that? Because I have made it crystal clear. I have made it crystal clear in the course of recent times that a lot of the violence that's been occurring in the streets of Belfast has been orchestrated by elements within the UVF and with some assistance from elements within the Orange Order. And I note that in the number of occasions,
Order. Allow the Deputy First Minister to answer the question. Order.
And I note that on a number of occasions when I have been here at this dispatch box, that not one member from the unionist benches has had the courage to challenge my assertion that the UVF and the Orange Order are responsible. That's what we have been dealing with, and until such times as people are prepared to do what I do within the community that I represent, standing against even threats to my own life from so-called dissident Republicans, unless we get to a point where that has been done by all of us, we are not moving forward.
Order, Chris Little. Order, Chris Little. Order, Chris Little.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of my party also, these attacks are not in the name of the vast majority of people in this community or reflect the values of the vast majority of people in this community. Can I ask the Deputy First Minister if he would agree that elected representatives, the PSNI, local authorities, the community and voluntary sector standing together against these abhorrent crimes is the most effective way to assist victims and to help the PSNI prevent these crimes? And could he update the Assembly as to whether any work has been going in OFM DFM to reinitiate the Unite Against Hate campaign to facilitate such?
Well, for me this is a time for leadership. We have seen totally and absolutely deplorable, despicable and unacceptable attacks on Alliance Party offices and indeed those who work in those offices. We have seen despicable attacks on isolated people from Eastern Europe, principally the Polish community, and a lot of speculation in the media in the course of recent times as to whether or not these were sectarian attacks or these were racist attacks. For me, it doesn't matter what they were. If somebody has come here to build a life, to build a future for themselves and for their children, they should be accorded the dignity and respect of every other person who lives within our society. So I absolutely agree with the member that this requires a coordinated approach. It requires all of us to speak with one voice. But unfortunately, we have not been speaking with one voice in the course of recent times. And I would like to see people rising to the occasion, recognising that the people of East Belfast overwhelmingly are good and decent people, but are effectively being dictated to by a gang of hoods and criminals. These people need to be exposed in the same way that I stand against those within my community who try to plunge us back to the past through their violent activities. That's a responsibility of politicians, and no campaign, Unite Against Hate or anything else, is going to work unless we, the politicians, give leadership.
Order, member. That includes all questions to the Deputy First Minister. We now move on to topical questions, and I call Leslie Creed.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I would like to ask the Deputy First Minister. The head of the European Commission has stated that the EU should find ways to cater for the United Kingdom's needs. Do you agree, Mr Minister, that these comments offer a clear basis for renegotiation of the United Kingdom's part in Europe?
To members should not be reading out topical questions. A member is a long-time member of this House, and really I watch a number of members who continually read out questions, and especially supplementary questions, plus topical questions. That should not be happening. Deputy First Minister.
Well, the member does raise whatever about how he delivered it, an important question. And of course, we as a local administration here have to be concerned at the debate which is presently ongoing, particularly in England, around EU membership and the prospect that there will be a referendum into that. Personally speaking, I think it would be a disaster for the island of Ireland and for us in the north if there was to be a vote on a referendum which would see withdrawal from the European Union. And I know that the big debate in England is around whether or not the British Prime Minister David Cameron has the ability to renegotiate aspects of Britain's membership of Europe. That's something over which we don't have any control, except to say that it is important to point out to those in England who have political responsibility that any decision which impacts on our economic prospects here is something that we absolutely need to be consulted about, because I hold a very strong view, which I think is shared by many members of this House on both sides, that withdrawal from Europe would be a disaster.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for his response. Minister, what do you think are the main areas that should be renegotiated as far as Northern Ireland and its benefits are concerned?
Well, we haven't raised in any of the conversations that we've had at executive level any areas that we think need to be renegotiated with Europe. We don't have any influence or power in that. The member state is the British government, led by David Cameron. He has direct responsibility for dealing with these matters, and I'm sure from our perspective, it's very, very important that we appraise him with our view of the dangers of withdrawal from Europe for our economic prospects. That said, I don't know how this debate will move forward. There's quite a number of important debates taking place at the minute across the water, not least in relation to what's happening in Scotland, which also has implications for that region also. So these are issues over which we have very little control, but they are issues over which we have a strong view, and I think it's very, very important that whatever happens doesn't damage the economic or employment prospects of the people that we represent.
Mr McGuinness.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And can I ask the Deputy Minister, given our commitment to equality in this House and in terms of gender balance, is the Deputy First Minister satisfied that, given that 53% of the civil service overall are female, in his own office only 22% of senior civil servants are in fact female?
Well, I just want to remind the member that I'm the Deputy First Minister. I'm not anybody's deputy. I think that the question raised by the member is a valid question and raises an issue which it does have to be of concern to all of us in terms of the ability to ensure that people who are within the civil service who are female have every opportunity to rise to the highest levels of the civil service. That represents a challenge both for the executive and for the civil service itself, and I think it's one that we need to tackle very, very quickly.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And can I thank the Deputy First Minister for his answer. As far as rising to the highest level is concerned, does he agree with me that the most glaring example of inequality is, in fact, we have 11 permanent secretaries here running 11 departments and they're all male? And can he give us an indication when he sees that situation changing?
I absolutely agree with the member. I think that it's not something to be proud of. It's something that does need to be changed, and I think the executive, working in consort with the civil service and the head of the civil service, needs to recognise that this is something that needs to be corrected as quickly as possible. Absolutely.
Can I ask the Deputy First Minister if he will lend his support to the local Bring Back Our Girls campaign in relation to the 200+ young girls who were kidnapped from their school in Nigeria?
Mr Speaker, with your permission, I'll ask Junior Minister McCann to answer this question.
Yes, well, can I say I don't think there's anyone right across the world couldn't be anything else but horrified and appalled when we saw the scenes, the aftermath of those young girls, up to nearly 300 of them, being kidnapped from their local school. I think that really, it shows how hate and intolerance and fundamentalism can actually, manifest itself in something like that. And I would say to the member, that I'm glad that this case in particular has got the international recognition that it needs. I think that we have seen, people all over the world condemn it in its strongest terms. And I would hope, because this type of action is happening regularly with young girls, because they're girls, don't believe that they have a right to be educated. And I think that really we need to send a clear message out. Everybody, right-thinking people, need to send a clear message out that that's wrong, that isn't the case. But that we're horrified that some of these young girls have been threatened with being sold off as sex slaves, and we've seen the scenes of their families and how distraught they are and devastated they are. And I think that we all should be sending out whatever we can and trying to send out our condemnation, but also our support for them and their families.
I would like to just thank the Minister for her answer. Can I ask, would the First and Deputy First Ministers be willing to write to the Nigerian government and call on them to use all their efforts to find these girls and bring them home, but also to use all of their efforts to unequivocally defend a woman's right to education?
I mean, most definitely, and even in some of the conversations I've had with the Deputy First Minister around this case, and I know that the member was with me at a protest at Belfast City Hall last week, where there were a number of people who came down to protest against this and actually to promote the Bring Back the Girls campaign. This is a worldwide campaign that was started off on social media, but I certainly, yes, I'm sure that, and I know the Deputy First Minister is very, very keen to do what he can, and I'm sure the First Minister will also be the same, because, as I said, no one could be anything but appalled and horrified at this event taking place in the first place.
Stuart Dixon.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Deputy First Minister confirm that by the time he and the First Minister meet at the next executive meeting on the 28th of May, that 6 weeks will have elapsed since the last meeting of the executive?
Well, obviously, in terms of meetings of the executive, meetings of the executive take place when we think that real business can be done. If there is nothing pressing, there are occasions, such as this, for example, whenever elections are taking place, that if there isn't anything that can wait for the 6-week period that the member speaks about, then we will deal with it immediately by calling a meeting of the executive. The figure of 6 weeks that he has put on it, I think I don't recognise that time frame for the next meeting of the executive, given that we've just recently had a meeting of the executive.
Given that there was only one meeting of the Executive in the last 6 weeks, can the Deputy Minister tell this House, and more importantly the citizens of Northern Ireland, what business is actually being held up by the lack of such meetings?
Well, again, I have to remind the member I am not anybody's deputy. I am the Deputy First Minister. That's the second time. That's the second time that mistake has been made. The member should be assured that meetings of the Executive are held very, very regularly indeed. And there are occasions when, of course, meetings of the Executive do not require to be held as regularly as previously. This is one of those periods. I am absolutely satisfied that nothing of major importance has been held up. There are issues that have not come to the Executive, but that's for different reasons.
Samuel Gardner. Sam Gardner.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Would the First Deputy Minister confirm? Would the Deputy First Minister?
Order. It may be deliberate, it may be accidental, but ministers should be addressed by their proper name in the House. Not good for all ministers. For all ministers.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Would the Deputy First Minister confirm that the business in relation to parading in Northern Ireland is a matter for Northern Ireland and the United Kingdom and not other foreign organisations or countries?
Well, I know some members might be a bit nervous whenever they get up and ask me a question, but this is a wee bit ridiculous. I mean, the whole issue of parading is an area of huge importance for all of us in this House. And as the member well knows, a huge effort was made prior to and around Christmas and the New Year just passed to try to get a resolution of that through the House discussions. I think it's hugely important that we get back to that work. I understand it isn't going to happen this side of the election, which is only a matter of days away, but I certainly passionately hope that immediately after the election that the parties can get together. And I note that the member's party has absented itself from the discussions that have been held thus far. But those who are willing to put the shoulder to the wheel to find a resolution, I think it's very, very important that we do that. There's a lot of talk and discussion about Richard Haas and Megan O'Sullivan coming back. What is my preferred option? My preferred option is that the parties can go into a room and find our own resolution. If that fails, then there is a massive responsibility on both governments to pull up their socks and do more than what they have done. And I have to say, speaking for myself, that the performance of the British government through that whole process has been a particular disappointment.
Mr Speaker, can I thank the Deputy First Minister for his remarks, but could the Deputy First Minister confirm that no foreign organisation or body outside the Northern Ireland and the United Kingdom will be involved in the discussions that we're having in relation to parading?
Well, I presume the import of that is that he regards the government in Dublin as foreign. Well, I wouldn't accept that analysis. I think that there is obviously intense interest in the community as to whether or not the British and Irish governments are going to play a positive and constructive role in assisting us, if required, to get a resolution to issues like the past, flag symbols and emblems, and the whole issue of parade.
John Corlett, could I ask the Deputy First Minister if he has met with the PSNI in regard to the racist attacks in East and North Belfast? Well,
I was going to give this question to the Junior Minister, but given the time obviously has run out, I think that it is important that we are all meeting with the police in regard to what are unacceptable situations, particularly in some parts of Belfast. And when I leave here now shortly, I will be meeting with the Chief Constable of the PSNI, Matt Baggett.
Concludes question. No, not during question time. Convention is certainly after question time. Happy enough to take a point of order. Concludes questions to the First and Deputy First Minister's office.